As I stood in the backyard, probably 3 o'clock in the morning, singing at the top of my lungs a song that I had made up that no one had ever heard before. My mother finally opened the door, and as I heard the sliding glass roll open, I spun around to see my mother standing there in her nightgown and her eyes groggy and her hair messed up, and she yelled, "Nobody wants to hear you sing at 3 o'clock in the morning! Shut up!" And after a few tears and heartbrokenness at my teenage self, that no one wanted to hear me sing, I pouted and went back to bed. I can look back these many years later and realize that she probably wasn't as much saying, "Nobody wants to hear you sing," as she was saying, "At 3 o'clock in the morning. You're disturbing the neighbors. You're loud. You're outside, and there's nothing to stop your voice from pounding on their windows at 3 o'clock in the morning." You ever had that dog in the neighborhood that just won't stop barking? Sirens go off 5 miles away, 10 miles away, and the dog starts to bark and howl and make all kinds of racket. I can imagine that my singing that night at 3 in the morning as I was making up a song with a new melody and new words and starting over and changing the melody and changing the... It probably sounded a lot like that dog mimicking the siren miles away, especially at 3 o'clock in the morning. But see, those words still resonate in my heart. And there are those times that I get up to sing or I get up to speak, and that echo is there. No one wants to hear you. This week we're in chapter 8, or in this video we're in chapter 8 of Live a More Excellent Life, and I call this chapter Peg Moments. Chapter 8, Peg Moments, identifying words that tie us to the past. I don't know if you know this, but when they train an elephant, the little baby elephants, when they're the size of a Labrador Retriever, the little baby elephants get a rope, a big, thick, heavy rope, sometimes even a chain, and it's clasped onto their ankle, and then it's staked into this ground with this giant wooden or metal stake, like you would tie down a tent with. I mean, you could tie off a truck to that thing, and it would take a massive monster truck to pull this stake out of the ground. So this baby elephant, the size of a Labrador Retriever, maybe a little bigger, has this steel clamp around his ankle. He has this chain that goes to this metal stake that's in the ground. And he'll run as far as he can as he's playing, and he'll get to the end of that chain, and bam! It yanks him back. And he'll pull on it, and he'll tug on it, and he'll yank on the chain, and he'll use his trunk to try to pull off his leg. And this will go on for months, years sometimes. And the longer the baby elephant fights against the chain, the longer he realizes that fight is futile. That metal stake in the ground is his limitation. You can only go as far as the chain will allow you to go. And as that elephant gets older and older and older, and the elephant gets more trained in what their range is, how far they can go before that chain yanks them back again, the less likely they are to pull against that chain. By the time the elephant is full grown, tens of thousands of pounds, one of the strongest and most aggressive animals on the earth, you could tie a shoestring around that elephant's ankle and put a toothpick in the ground in the same place as that stake. But the elephant doesn't pull against the resistance. He knows his range. She knows just how far she can go before she runs out of slack. My friends, we human beings, just like Pavlov's dogs and fleas in a jar with a lid on it, we learn the same thing. The fleas will only jump so high. After they hit the lid so many times, they stop jumping higher than that. You could take the lid off, and although the fleas have the power to jump out of the jar and leave, they'll only jump as high as the lid used to be. We're trained like Pavlov's dogs that when we hear the sound of the dinner bell, we come running and salivating. We react to the stimuli because we're driven by those things. It's one of the challenges of the human nature that we often derive our value and our abilities and our passions and our willingness to fight for what we want from the words that are shared with us, that are spoken to us or over us by other people, especially people that we consider to be significant in our lives: parents, teachers, close friends, other family. When they speak over our lives and they say things to us like, "I don't know who told you you could sing, but they were wrong," or "You're not going to be big enough to play football," or "You're not smart enough to be a rocket scientist. It's just not going to happen." All of these type of inclinations that other people have speak over us and build limitations for us. That's why I call them peg moments. See, the truth of the matter is, it would be really hard for a 2-year-old to drive. Not just because they can't get a license, but because they're physically not able to reach the steering wheel and the gas pedal at the same time. It would be pretty difficult for a 12-year-old to drive at the level necessary for NASCAR. And yet we know people who are now driving in NASCAR, who drove in Indy, Danica Patrick, who was told early on, "You can't drive race cars. Girls don't drive race cars." And she went on not only to prove them wrong, but to win several times. She wasn't just able to drive a race car, she was able to drive it at a winning level. Now, how many other people in life have been told early on, "You can't do that. You're not smart enough. You're not fast enough. You're not strong enough. You're not educated enough. You don't come from that kind of stock. Your family doesn't have that kind of potential." And all of these things are pegs driven in the ground so that our limitations become clear to us. You'll never go any farther than that. You'll never achieve any more than this. And when we allow those peg moments in our life, those words that are spoken, to hold us in a certain place, they can determine the rest of our lives. They can determine our future. We just give up fighting for those things that we could do, because we've already believed that we couldn't do. Now, here's a sad reality when we talk about human beings. I was watching another movie last night with my boys. It's part of the Divergent series. And in this particular one, they've made it outside the city of Chicago. They've made it to the other culture, if you will, where the laboratory is, for lack of a better word. And in this particular place, when they walk in, they begin to separate them in different jobs and tasks. That's understandable. They move them based on what their qualifications and their capabilities are. That's understandable. We recommend the same thing as coaches and leaders, that if you're great at something, that you should find ways for that to become not only part of your passionate pursuits, but also part of your career pursuits or your income pursuits, that you should wrap together what you do for a vocation with what you're passionately good at naturally. When you can put those two things together, Confucius says, if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. It's because it doesn't seem like work when you love what you're doing. And when you love what you do and you're naturally good at it, man, the sky is the limit. But when they brought them into this lab and they separated everybody out, they picked one girl and they said to her, "You're pure, they're all damaged." And by that, they were able to create a rift in the strongest relationship in the bunch. Now, here's what I know about human nature. We tend to want to be the best. We want to be unique. If you watch teenagers especially, they have this rebellious nature, and you'll see shirts that say, "Why be normal?" Well, if everybody is unique, there is no normal. What is normal? Normal is the average of all. But there's no real normal if everyone is completely unique. And yet we fight for that uniqueness. If you think back to the training of the elephant, that conditioning that builds the limit and says, don't do any different than this. I want you to think too of the training of the monkeys. When they put the monkeys, and this was more of a test than an ongoing training, they put several monkeys in a lab room, and in this room there were bananas hanging from the top of a steel tree. When they first put the monkeys in there, all of the monkeys kind of looked at the bananas at the top of the tree and went, "I'll have some of that." And so they would individually climb to the top of the tree. And as they would climb to the top of the tree, all the other monkeys would get doused. doused with cold water. So one monkey goes up the tree, all the monkeys get doused with cold water, and the monkey thinks, well, I can't get the bananas, I'm going to get hit with cold water. And they might come back down and another monkey would try, and all the monkeys get doused with cold water. And so on it goes until the monkey gives up trying to get to the bananas because they don't want to get hit with cold water. Well, here's what they also found. If they took one of the monkeys out, after all the monkeys have been doused with cold water, and they put in a monkey who'd never been doused with cold water, his first natural inclination is to go for the bananas. So they put him in the room and he tries to climb the tree to get to the bananas. And all the other monkeys tell him, no, you're not going up there because we're not getting doused with cold water. And the other monkeys would stop him from success. Not because he's not capable of success, but because they don't want to pay the price for his success. Think about that for a minute. They don't want to pay the price for his success. If he does get to the bananas, all the monkeys get wet. All the monkeys know this. So that monkey tries to go to the top of the tree. All the other monkeys stop him. So they take out another monkey that's been doused with cold water and they trade him. And now we have 2 that have never been wet and 3 that have been wet. And when number 2 tries to go up the top of the tree, all the other monkeys stop him, even the one who's never been wet. And they continue this process until there's 5 monkeys in the room that have never been wet. But for whatever reason that they've been conditioned not to climb that tree and get those bananas, they will each stop any new monkey that enters the room. I don't know that they could explain to you that the previous generation of monkeys have been doused with cold water for going after the bananas. But they can tell you for certain, we don't do that here. If you ever worked in a work environment like that, we don't do that around here. That's not the way we do it. We've been doing it this way for years, and we're not changing now. See, we all kind of struggle with those same types of limitations and barriers. And sometimes they're self-imposed. Well, I'm not going to try that. I'd hate to fail at it just because I tried to do it and wasn't good enough. And so we push back from opportunity that way. But sometimes we find ourselves in that environment, whether it's work or it's church or it's friends or it's family, where everyone else around us thinks, well, I've tried that and it didn't work. There's no way it's going to work for you. If it didn't work for me, there's no way it's going to work for you. I failed at it. You're going to fail at it. And because of that, like the elephant's peg moment, being nailed to the ground, chained to the ground, staked to the ground, we run headlong into limitations. And often, they're not our limitations. They're someone else's limitations. It's not our inability to do it. It's someone else's inability to do it. It's not our fight that we're losing. It's someone else's fight that we're being asked not to fight in. The challenge is when we say to someone, I just see you spending the rest of your life in jail. The path you're on right now is a complete failure. We're building another peg for them. We're driving a stake in the ground to say, this is as far as you'll ever go. And we've got to be cautious with the words that we say, but we've also got to be cautious with the words we're willing to hear. When someone else says to us, you're not going to be able to pull this off. You can't accomplish this. If I couldn't do it, you can't do it. No one has done this before you. I mentioned in a previous video that I had won the science fair when I was in high school. I didn't just win in the category that I was in. I won first place in physics and first place overall for the science fair. I was offered a scholarship for the University of North Texas because of winning that physics. I was also offered a scholarship for music and for physics and for speech all at the same time to the same university. But the day that I won the science fair, while I still had my project in my hand, a gentleman from the radio station came to interview me. He said on the microphone as he was interviewing me, he said, you know, if you were actually able to pull off what you said you could do in your science fair project, if you actually made that thing work, you would disprove the law of relativity. I don't think you're that smart. Do you? And when he stuck the microphone in my face, what he was doing was driving a peg in the ground. That idea will never work. I had an uncle tell me of the same idea. If you actually do create a car that will run on water, all they're going to do is start charging us for water. It'll be the same thing that it is now with gasoline. You go to the pump and you pay for gasoline. If you find a car that runs on water, they'll just start charging us for water. And those two pessimistic views caused me to step back. I was told right then, you can't do this. And maybe that's not what they meant to say, but it's how I received it and it's how I acted on it. I took that science fair project and threw it in the dumpster. And I never touched it again. And I never went to college for physics or music or speech. Instead, I went off to a trade school so I could stay close to my girlfriend. I felt like the only person who believed in me then was her. And when we broke up, I went off the deep end. I nearly took my own life. I contemplated all kinds of silly things, and I joined the military as a result. Now, I know that my life has been a planned path all along because I believe in divine intervention, and I believe in divine detours. But I also know that I'm 20 years behind schedule on what I could have accomplished if I'd started this path when I got out of high school. And a lot of that had to do with the people who believed in me or who mocked me at that time. See, I don't think any of those people truly believed that I was incapable of accomplishing what I set out to do, or incapable of accomplishing what I set my mind to do and focused my heart to do. Here's what I do believe. They were jealous of the opportunity of success. And like the monkeys in the room, they didn't want me to climb the tree if they couldn't climb the tree. You know, if you put crabs in a barrel, they'll do the same thing. 20 crabs in one barrel. One crab gets his little claw up over the edge and he's pulling himself up. The other crabs will pull his legs off to keep him from getting away. Why? Because they're jealous of his success. They don't want him to move on. And I'm going to tell you right now, there is so much opportunity in this world where people around us, the peer pressure to be average, the peer pressure to be normal, the peer pressure not to let your head stick up because it's the nail that's sticking up that gets pounded, right? Those are the challenges that we face. There is opportunity abounding to success in this life. And there's nothing stopping you except the fear of the people around you that you allow to become your own. There's a story, if you go to the operationcare.org, if you go to their website and check it out, find Julie's story. And you're going to find the story of a woman with an IQ over 150 who was homeless in downtown Dallas. And thanks to the work of Operation Care, she has completely changed and redirected her life. She's gone back to school. She's gotten in touch with her family. She's had a complete makeover. She doesn't look, sound, or act anything like a homeless woman. But that's her past. So here's the question. With an IQ of 150 and all the world in front of you of opportunity, how did she become homeless? A lack of belief, a few mistakes, other crabs pulling her down, other monkeys that said, don't succeed, don't succeed. Whatever you do, don't succeed because then you'll stand out. I'm going to tell you right now, there are opportunities out there for you. For your life to be exactly what it was designed to be. For your life to be wide open with opportunity. But there are people who have spoken into your life out of their own fear, out of their own jealousy, out of their own successes, that they don't want you to compete on the same level or they don't want you to rise above them. And they will do everything they can to keep you down. Is it intentional? Some of it. Is it subconscious? Most of it. Is it damaging? All of it. Yes. So we as friends, as adults, as parents of children, as leaders who influence others, we have to learn when those peg moments are being driven in, when those stakes are being driven in the ground, to limit someone else, to say, you're not going to be able to pull this off, you can't do this. Now, it's absolutely responsible leadership, responsible influence of parents, responsible influence of friends to say, you got to finish step A before you move on to step B. You need to finish your high school or your GED or your diploma or whatever it is before you go to college. Why? Because you can't get into college without it. You got to finish that before you go into a career field. Why? Because you can't really start a career field without it. Now, are there people who have never been to college who are great successes? I don't know. Ask Bill Gates. Ask Steve Jobs. These are people whose life didn't require a college degree because their intellect and their passion and their heart and their ability to bring people around them all directly influenced their future. Their college degree didn't make a big difference to them. There are other people who, without their college degree, their multiple degrees, their PhDs, wouldn't have the knowledge and the information and the wisdom to garner the support that allows them to do what they do. There are those whose life is a calling of academia, And to be in academia, to be a teacher, you've got to be educated. You've got to be informed. So that pathway could be for many people, but not for everyone. But to set those steps up, we would be irresponsible leaders if we didn't at least put some limitation and go, you know what, I love you, son, but at 13, you're not driving the car. Why? Well, because there's laws against it. I know you're tall enough to see over the steering wheel. I know you can reach the gas pedal. I know you think you have all of the agility and all of the smarts because you've been playing video games. But there are laws against 13-year-olds driving, so no, it's not going to happen. That's not a peg moment. That's a responsible restriction, and those are different. What I want you to also realize is that in the same way that we have peg moments that stake us in the ground and keep us from moving forward with progress, we have peg moments that we stake in the ground that become like a leverage point, like a catapult, where someone pulls against it, and at just the right time we release them into that future. And the ability to do that well is almost like the rock climber who's climbing up the side of this sheer cliff. And the person going in front of them climbs a little bit ahead and drives the stake into the side of the mountain. And then they're able to reach up for a handhold and pull themselves up to it. That's the kind of peg moment that you should be driving for people. It's the kind of peg moment you should be looking for from people. If you're surrounded by friends who drive mountain pegs in below you and pull you down, or drive them in the ground and pull your limitations back rather than setting you free or pulling you forward, you should consider finding new friends. If you're the kind of family member that tells people you can't, you won't, you're not capable, you're not smart enough, you're not educated enough, you don't have enough money, you don't have the right influence, you don't have enough friends, that your life is always going to be a failure, stop doing that. If you're the kind of parent or friend who does that, stop doing that. If you have a friend or a family member who does that, stop listening to them. Because they're not building your future. They're restraining your future to secure their own. And that's not right. But if you have the kind of friends who will climb up the mountain a little bit ahead of you and drive that stake into the side of the sheer cliff so that you can tie off and pull yourself up, those are the kinds of friends you want to surround yourself with. Those are the kinds of people you want to have in your life on a regular basis. And I'm going to challenge you to find those friends, to get involved with those friends. And if the circle you have right now isn't filled with those friends, find new friends. Now here's the next thing I want you to do. There was a time when I was teaching a Dale Carnegie class, and I began in this moment, this kind of revelation, to realize all the times that someone had spoken into my life these limitations. And I felt like I was a mummy wrapped up in these limitations. And I had my butcher paper roll with me. Remember, we talked about that in previous videos as well. All the way back to chapters 1 and 2, we talked about the butcher paper, putting the roll on the wall and writing down all the things that impact our lives. So I took my butcher paper and I stripped it out across the table, a whole 8-foot table, and I had everyone in the Dale Carnegie class go up there with the Sharpie and write on there the phrases that they've been told that limit them. Write down when you were told, I can't do this or you won't do that. And then we read them out loud with the whole class, 35 people, and everybody had something. Some of them had multiple times that someone had spoken to their life and said, you're going to fail at this. You can't succeed at that. You're not good enough for this. And as we wrote them all down, I then wrapped myself in that piece of paper like a mummy. And I said, this is how we live our lives, wrapped up and restricted. We're bound up by the words that other people have spoken into our lives. And then I just spread my arms and screamed, and I said, like Hulk, we've got to break free of this. We've got to stop believing the lies and start believing the truth. If you allow your life to be limited by those words that are wrapped around you, your life is done now. There's really not a whole lot of point fighting. But if you're the person who's driving those little stakes on the ground, it's limiting everybody else, stop doing that and start planting stakes that they can catapult off of. Start climbing a little higher on the mountain for them. Reach up and grab the bananas and hand them down. Make life easier for those who are coming behind you, not harder. You have a chance to build peg moments for a positive future in their life. I want to read just a brief paragraph for you. We've discussed both unintentional and intentional bad peg moments. Now we'll discuss how to break free from those bad peg moments and then how to create good peg moments in your life, in the lives of people you care about. as part of the training seminar. And so this is where we talk about that mummy wrap that's on page 91. I know this moment is only symbolic, and some of you have a much quieter personality than to stand in front of a classroom of people and shout. I also know that you have experienced the pain of stolen dreams, but still have a spark burning inside of you, and you need to shout. The first step of realizing those dreams and the best chance you have of ripping that stake out of the ground is to take this moment to reignite your passion with a warrior's shout. All right, if you're watching this and you have a chance to write, I want you to write this down. If not, replay this video and watch it later. I have the choice to pursue my dreams. I have the right to dream, and I will not let the opinion of others stop me or anchor me or tie me down. Did you hear that? I'm going to say it again. I have the choice to pursue my dreams. I have the right to dream, and I will not let the opinion of others stop me, anchor me, or tie me down. I want you to memorize that. I want that to become a mantra that you use in your life on a regular basis. If you have to, write it in lipstick on the bathroom mirror. I have the choice to dream. It's my right. I have the power to dream. I have the right to dream, and I will not let the opinion of others stop me, anchor me, or tie me down. Just because someone else has an opinion of you doesn't mean you need to base your life on it. But I will challenge you to put some positive peg moments out there. To look at your children and say, you can do this. You got this. I believe in you. To say to your friends at school or your friends at work or your friends on the street, absolute strangers. I was chatting with a woman yesterday from England, and she told me that she just felt an inkling to go into a store and buy a bucket of ice. And she went in and got her ice, and on the way out, she felt an inkling to say to this absolute stranger, wow, you're a very attractive man. And a tear began to well up in his eye, and as she sat and chatted with him for a few minutes, she found out he had just been diagnosed with throat cancer. And in his mind, he was collapsing. Everything was falling apart around him. His life was becoming hopeless. And this absolute stranger stopping out of nowhere and saying, wow, you're a very attractive man, gave him a little spark of hope that his life wasn't over. A little spark of hope that other people who didn't even know him cared enough about him to speak a word to him. And you have that power. You have the ability to look at absolute strangers and friends and family and children and siblings and say, I believe in you. You can do this. There's nothing stopping you. And I'm behind you 100% of the way. And each one of those phrases is another peg moment, another stake driven in the cliff a little bit higher up for them to climb higher, for them to reach the next height. And there's nothing stopping you from doing that. Now, there's some questions on the screen. They're the same ones that are at the end of this chapter. And I want you to ask these questions. What are some peg moments that have impacted my life? What are some of the things that I've heard said to me that I've allowed to dictate my future? Stop singing. No one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear what you have to say. You'll never be able to build that car, because if you did, people would just charge us for water and you'd disprove the law of relativity. All of those are the kinds of things that we allow to determine our future. What are some of those in your life? I want you to write them down so that we can destroy them. Ask yourself honestly, who placed that peg in my life? Who was it that said to me, you can't, you won't, you're not capable, you're not worthy? And then ask yourself this question, can I forgive them? Can I let go of them and let go of that peg? And then finally, ask yourself this question, whose life do I speak into that I honestly and genuinely have an opportunity to reach up higher on the side of that sheer cliff and drive a stake in the ground that they could reach for, that they could strive for, that would pull them higher up when they reach it? It's not a matter of just stopping the negative peg moments, intentional or otherwise, the things you accidentally said or the ones you said on purpose. It's not just breaking free from the ones, intentional or unintentional, that were spoken into your life. It is a matter of moving forward and building positive peg moments that will allow others to thrive. And that's my challenge for you today. I want you to build peg moments that positively impact other people and break free from the ones that have tied you down for so long. I'm J. Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.